Isabella Carter stood at the edge of the living room, her hands folded tightly against her chest as laughter filled the house. The air smelled of roses and polished wood, the furniture arranged neatly for the guests who had gathered to celebrate her younger sister, Lillian. At only 24, Lillian was engaged to a wealthy man from a well-known family. Their mother, Elaine, floated through the crowd in a silk dress, her smile wide, her voice carrying as she introduced her younger daughter with pride. Harold, their father, stood close by, nodding politely as if agreeing to every word his wife spoke. And Bella? She lingered near the doorway, like a shadow in her own home. She had spent years holding things together, working long shifts, paying off quiet debts, and keeping the lights on when her father's business faltered. Yet here she was, invisible in the middle of a celebration she had indirectly made possible. "Bella," Elaine's voice snapped her back. Her mother's expression was tight, her smile faltering for just a moment. "Don't just stand there. Try not to sulk. People will think you're jealous." The words stung more than they should have. Bella's throat tightened. "I'm not jealous, Mom. I'm just—" "Please," Elaine cut in, her tone laced with irritation. "Tonight is about Lillian. The last thing we need is you drawing attention." Her sister, glowing in a pastel dress, floated past and wrapped an arm around Elaine. Lillian's smile was sweet, but her eyes flickered with triumph as she glanced at Bella. "Don't worry, Bella. Not everyone can be in the spotlight. Some of us are just better suited for it." A few nearby guests chuckled softly, clearly catching the jab. Bella forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She felt like the walls were closing in, every laugh echoing as if mocking her presence. Later that evening, when the guests had gone and the dishes were cleared, Bella overheard her parents in the dining room. "She seemed out of place tonight," Harold murmured. Elaine scoffed. "Of course she did. Isabella has never known how to carry herself. She'll only embarrass us at the wedding. Better to keep her in the background where she belongs." Bella froze in the hallway, her hands trembling. They weren't just dismissing her, they were erasing her. That night, as she lay awake staring at the ceiling, Bella's heart ached with humiliation, but beneath the pain, something new began to stir. They could push her aside, they could strip her of recognition, but they would never take her strength. And one day, they would regret underestimating her. The morning after Lillian's engagement party, the Carter house was quiet. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, but to Isabella it felt heavy, almost suffocating. She walked into the kitchen, half hoping her mother might say something kind, anything to soften the sting of last night. Instead, Elaine stood at the counter with a phone pressed to her ear, her voice bright and cheerful. Yes, Lillian looked radiant. "We're so proud of her. Oh, Isabella, she was there, but you know how she is, kept to herself." Bella froze in the doorway. Elaine caught her eye, and without missing a beat, turned her back. That was enough. Bella slipped out the door, her chest tight. She needed air. She needed someone who wouldn't cut her down with every word. Grace Whitman's cottage sat at the edge of town, surrounded by rose bushes that spilled over the white picket fence. Grace had been the Carters' neighbor for years, a widow with silver hair and kind eyes, who always made Bella feel like she mattered. When Grace opened the door, Bella barely managed a smile. "I hope I'm not bothering you." "Nonsense," Grace said warmly, ushering her inside. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world. Sit down." "Tell me." Bella sank into the old floral armchair, the familiar scent of lavender calming her nerves. Words tumbled out, the humiliation at the party, the overheard whispers, the way her mother had practically erased her existence. Grace listened, never interrupting. When Bella finally stopped, her throat dry, Grace placed a gentle hand over hers. "My dear, you've given, and they've taken until there's nothing left. But let me tell you something. People like your mother only value what they can put on display. Quiet strength doesn't shine under her kind of light. That doesn't make it less powerful." Bella blinked back tears. "But what if they never see it? What if they never see me?" Grace's gaze softened. "Then you stop waiting for them. You build a life where your worth isn't measured by their blindness. That, Bella, will be your truest revenge. Walking back home, Bella carried those words with her. For the first time, she thought about life beyond the Carter household. Life that wasn't defined by Elaine's sharp tongue or Lillian's smirks. Maybe Grace was right. Maybe it was time to stop trying to be seen in a house determined to make her invisible. And maybe, just maybe, the best way to fight back was to leave. For the next few days, Bella moved through the Carter home like a ghost. Elaine busied herself with wedding details, her voice sharp with orders for florists and dressmakers. Lillian basked in the glow of attention, constantly showing off her engagement ring, her laughter echoing through the halls. And Harold? He stayed quiet, hiding behind his newspaper as if silence excused his absence. Bella tried to endure it, but each day chipped away at her. She wasn't angry in the way she once thought she would be. No, what she felt was something colder, clearer. She didn't belong here anymore. One evening, as Elaine criticized her for not ironing the linens properly, Bella finally set the fabric down and looked her mother straight in the eye. "Mom," she said, evenly, "I won't be here for the wedding." Elaine blinked, startled. "What on earth are you talking about? I mean it. You've made it clear I'm not wanted, so I won't force myself into a place where I don't belong." For a moment, Elaine's lips parted, but then she let out a short laugh. "Don't be dramatic, Isabella. You'll regret this." Bella shook her head. "The only thing I regret is staying this long." She walked upstairs before her mother could respond, her heart pounding. That night she packed her bags quietly, old clothes, a few books, and her savings tucked into an envelope. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Before leaving, she paused in the doorway of her childhood room. The wallpaper was faded, the corners stacked with memories. It had once felt like a safe haven, but now it felt like a cage. She closed the door softly behind her. Grace welcomed her with open arms. "You'll stay here until you're on your feet," she said firmly. "No arguments." Bella hugged her tightly, whispering, "Thank you." The next morning, as the sun rose over Grace's garden, Bella stood with her small suitcase at her feet and breathed in the crisp air. She felt both terrified and free. For the first time in her life, she wasn't living under her family's shadow. She was stepping into her own. Bella adjusted quickly to life at Grace's cottage. It was small, quiet, and smelled faintly of lavender and old books. But it was warm in a way the Carter house never had been. Grace insisted on treating her like family, sliding plates of warm food across the table, reminding her each night that she wasn't alone. But Bella knew she couldn't live off kindness forever. She needed work, purpose, and a way to prove, to herself more than anyone, that she could build a life outside her family's shadow. One morning, she dressed carefully and walked into the city. Her savings wouldn't last long, so she went from office to office, asking about openings. By late afternoon, her feet ached, and rejection clung to her like a heavy coat. Finally, she wandered into a modest but bustling office building with the name Blake and Associates engraved on the glass door. Inside, professionals moved quickly, files tucked under their arms. Bella hesitated before approaching the receptionist. "I was wondering if you had any entry-level positions available," she asked softly. The receptionist gave her a long look before nodding. "Wait here. Mr. Blake sometimes speaks with applicants himself." Minutes later, a tall man with silver hair and sharp eyes stepped out of an office. "I'm Jonathan Blake," he said, extending a hand. "You're looking for work?" "Yes," Bella replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "I don't have much experience in corporate work, but I'm willing to learn. I work hard. Harder than most." Blake studied her for a moment. Something in her tone seemed to catch his attention, not desperation, but determination forged by years of being overlooked. "Come with me," he said finally. In his office, she explained her background, long hours helping with her father's failing business, balancing books in secret while her family barely noticed. She spoke of sacrifice without asking for sympathy. Blake leaned back in his chair, intrigued. "You've done the work of an analyst without ever having the title. Most people your age don't understand responsibility the way you clearly do. I like that, Bella blinked, hardly believing his words. Does that mean? He smiled faintly. You start Monday. Prove to me I'm not wrong about you. Walking back to Grace's cottage that evening, Bella felt lighter than she had in years. For once, someone had seen her, not as a burden, not as an afterthought, but as someone capable. The door that her family tried to shut had just opened wider than she ever imagined. The office at Blake & Associates became a place of quiet triumph for Bella. On her very first day, Jonathan Blake handed her a stack of files no intern would normally touch. Let's see what you can do, he said with a small smile. Bella spent hours combing through numbers, untangling errors, and highlighting flaws that others had overlooked. By evening, Jonathan returned to find her notes neatly arranged, her explanations sharp but humble. You've got an eye for detail, he told her. Most people skim the surface. You dig for the first time in years? Bella felt something she had nearly forgotten. Pride. Meanwhile, back at the Carter home, Elaine was in her element. Fabric swatches, flower samples, and seating charts covered the dining table. Lillian's wedding will be the talk of the season, she told Harold as she flipped through glossy magazines. Lillian floated around the house like royalty, dismissing the staff with sharp remarks and insisting on the most expensive options. Nothing less than perfection, she declared, slipping into a designer gown for yet another fitting. Whenever Bella crossed their minds at all, it was only as a passing inconvenience. Elaine brushed off her absence at family gatherings with a simple line. She's too busy to help. Probably sulking again to the outside world, it looked like a picture-perfect family preparing for a grand celebration. But the cracks were there, hidden in Harold's worried eyes, in the mounting bills Elaine pretended not to see. One evening, Bella sat across from Grace at the cottage, exhaustion softened by satisfaction. It feels different here, Bella admitted. At work, people notice when I try. They listen, they value what I bring. At home, I was invisible. Grace's eyes warmed with pride. That's because you were never the problem, my dear. You were simply in the wrong place. Flowers don't bloom in shadows, they bloom in light. Bella smiled faintly, her chest tightening with gratitude. She wasn't in the spotlight yet, but she was growing stronger every day. And though she tried not to think about it, a quiet truth simmered in the back of her mind. One day, her family would see. Not because she begged for their recognition, but because her success would leave them no choice. Weeks turned into months, and Bella's rhythm at Blake & Associates grew steady. She arrived early, stayed late, and handled each task with quiet precision. What began as a chance opportunity soon became undeniable proof of her capability. One Friday morning, Jonathan called her into his office. "Sit down, Isabella," he said, handing her a folder. "I want you to lead this account." Her eyes widened. "Me?" "You've been doing the work already," he replied. "It's time you get the title to match." Bella walked out of his office that day with her first real promotion. Her name on a project that mattered. For the first time, her future felt like it belonged to her, not to her parents, not to her sister, not to anyone else. Back at the Carter household, the energy was different. While the chandeliers glowed and the dresses sparkled, there were whispers beneath the glamour. The bills were piling up. Elaine had booked a venue that cost more than Harold's yearly income. Caterers demanded deposits. The wedding planner hinted, politely but firmly, that payments were overdue. Harold sighed one evening, lowering his paper. "Elaine, this is too much. We can't afford all of it." Elaine waved a manicured hand. "Nonsense. Lillian's wedding must be perfect. We'll manage somehow." But even Lillian seemed restless. Sitting in her room, she scrolled through pictures of other brides on social media, her voice sharp as she muttered, "Why does everything I pick look less than theirs?" Elaine soothed her with promises, while Harold stared at the numbers in silence. At Grace's cottage, Bella sat at the small wooden table, sipping tea as she shared the news of her promotion. Grace's eyes shone. "I knew they'd see your worth." "The world can't ignore light forever," Bella smiled. Though part of her heart ached, She imagined what her parents might say if they knew. Would they congratulate her? Or dismiss her achievement as irrelevant compared to Lillian's wedding? She set the thought aside. She no longer needed their approval. What she had now was stronger: independence, respect, and a future she was building brick by brick. Still, late at night, she couldn't help but wonder. The Carters were chasing an image built on borrowed money and brittle pride. And one day, the facade would break. The Carter mansion looked dazzling from the outside, but inside, unease lingered. Lillian's wedding was only weeks away. And though invitations had been mailed and vendors booked, whispers followed the family. Caterers demanded larger deposits. The florist threatened to cancel, and even the boss jeweler hesitated to release the rings without final payment. One evening, Harold's patience broke. "Elaine, this isn't sustainable. We're drowning," Elaine's eyes flashed. "Do you want our daughter humiliated on her wedding day? Do you want the town to think we can't provide?" "It's not about pride," Harold muttered. "It's math." But Elaine had built her life on appearances, and she clung to them desperately. While the Carter household grew tense, Bella's life was moving in a different direction. Her promotion had brought her into rooms she never expected. One afternoon during a client presentation, she noticed a man across the table watching her carefully. After the meeting, he introduced himself. "Michael Hayes," he said with a firm handshake. "I have to say, you handled those negotiations brilliantly." Most people crumble under pressure. Bella smiled, a little surprised. "Thank you. I've had a lot of practice in being underestimated." Michael chuckled softly. Underestimated people are usually the strongest. They know how to fight for what others take for granted. It was a simple conversation, but something about his words lingered. He saw her not as invisible, not as secondary, but as someone capable and commanding. That evening, Bella sat with Grace, recounting the encounter. Grace's lips curved knowingly. "You see, the world is beginning to open for you, Bella. Doors your family never even tried to knock on." Bella stirred her tea slowly, her thoughts drifting. "It feels strange. They're chasing something fragile, something that could collapse any moment. And I'm building something solid. Something real." Grace leaned forward. "That's the difference between image and substance. Image fades. Substance grows." Back at the Carter mansion, Elaine and Lillian fought over table arrangements, while Harold quietly studied overdue bills. The sparkle of the wedding masked the fractures beneath, but the fractures were spreading. And Bella, though absent from their plans, was about to become part of a very different story, one where her family's crumbling facade would no longer hide the truth. The invitations had been sent, the venue booked, and the florist contracted. But behind the elegant surface, the Carters' world was unraveling. Vendors began calling at odd hours, their voices sharper with each demand. The whispers that started in quiet corners soon slipped into public spaces. At the country club, an acquaintance leaned over to another and murmured, "I hear the Carters haven't paid half their wedding bills." By the end of the week, the rumor had traveled through town, growing with each retelling. Elaine still walked with her chin high, but her smile looked thinner, brittle as glass. Harold, buried under ledgers and overdue notices, tried to reason with her. "Elaine, we can't keep pretending. It's out there now. People are talking." Elaine's voice cracked. "They're jealous. That's all it is. Lillian deserves this wedding. She deserves perfection." But even Lillian began to notice the shift. Friends stopped answering her calls, designers hesitated to loan her gowns, and her fiancé's family began asking pointed questions about the Carters' finances. While her family's image wavered, Bella's life glowed brighter. Jonathan Blake praised her work at a firm-wide meeting, naming her as one of the company's rising leaders. "In every project she finds solutions others overlook," he announced, his voice carrying across the boardroom. Bella sat quietly, her cheeks warming as applause filled the room. She didn't crave attention, but this was different. This wasn't forced applause. It was respect, earned by effort no one could deny. Afterward, Michael Hayes found her in the lobby. "You don't even realize it, do you?" he asked, a smile tugging at his lips. "Realize what?" Bella tilted her head. "That you've already outgrown the shadows you lived in. You're not proving yourself anymore, Bella. You've already proven it." Her chest tightened with something unfamiliar. Pride without guilt. Strength without fear. That evening, as she shared the news with Grace, Bella's voice was steady. "It feels like I've stepped into a different world. They're crumbling, and I'm rising. Part of me almost pities them." Grace nodded softly. "Pity is fine, but never forget. Your strength is not an accident. It was forged by every dismissal, every harsh word. And one day, they will see what they lost." Back at the Carter mansion, Elaine sat in the darkened living room, bills scattered across the table. Lillian stormed upstairs after another fight with her fiancé, her perfect image slipping through her fingers. Harold simply sighed, knowing the facade was too fragile to last. The fall had begun, and Bella, though far away, was no longer the forgotten daughter. She was the one they would soon have no choice but to face. The Carter mansion, once filled with laughter and planning, had grown quiet. Bills cluttered the dining table, unopened envelopes stacked high like silent accusations. Harold sat with his head in his hands, while Elaine paced the floor, her perfect composure cracking. Lillian's fiancé had finally confronted them. "I can't be tied to a family drowning in debt," he declared, returning the engagement ring in a velvet box. His words echoed long after he left, leaving Lillian sobbing in her bedroom, her dreams of a fairy tale wedding shattered overnight. By morning, the news spread. The broken engagement was whispered about in coffee shops, at the club, and even in church pews. The Carters, once envied for their wealth and polish, became the subject of pitying glances and muffled laughter. Desperate, Elaine made a choice. She swore she never would. She picked up the phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in months. Bella answered softly. "Hello?" Her mother's voice trembled. "Isabella, it's your mother." We need to talk." Bella froze, her fingers tightening around the phone. The last time Elaine had spoken to her, it was with sharp dismissal. Now her tone carried something unfamiliar, humility. "What is it?" Bella asked, her voice steady. "Things haven't gone as planned," Elaine admitted. "We need your help. Please." For a long moment, Bella said nothing. She thought of the years spent in silence, the nights of being overlooked, the cruel words whispered when they thought she wasn't listening. Finally, she exhaled. "I'll come by tomorrow." That evening, Bella sat with Grace, her heart conflicted. Part of me wants to walk away forever, but another part wants them to see who I've become without them. Grace studied her quietly before speaking. "Then go, Bella. Not for their sake, but for yours. Stand in that house not as the forgotten daughter, but as the woman they can't ignore." The next day, Bella walked up the familiar steps of the Carter mansion. Her heels clicked against the stone path, her posture steady. The door opened, and for the first time, her parents looked at her, not with dismissal, but with something closer to fear. The balance of power had shifted, and Bella was ready to claim it. The Carter dining room was strangely quiet when Bella entered. The same long table where she had once sat invisible now stood cluttered with unpaid bills and half-empty wine glasses. Elaine and Harold looked older, their shoulders sagging under shame. Lillian sat rigid in her chair, her eyes swollen from days of crying. Elaine forced a brittle smile. "Isabella, thank you for coming." Bella's gaze swept the room. For years she had longed to hear those words, but now, standing in her sharp suit, her confidence evident, she realized she didn't crave them anymore. "You asked for help," Bella said evenly. "So tell me, what do you expect from me?" Harold's voice was low. "We're in over our heads. The debts, the embarrassment, it's all too much. We thought perhaps you might—" Bella let the silence linger before finishing for him. "Save you?" Elaine flinched at the word. For years she had begged for recognition. For years she had given without thanks. But now, with her career thriving, her own life blooming, she finally understood. Revenge didn't always mean destruction. Sometimes it meant standing tall while others faced the consequences of their arrogance. Bella straightened, her voice calm but firm. I built my life without you. I stood on my own when you dismissed me. And now you've come to me, not out of love, but out of desperation. Elaine's lips trembled. We were wrong about you. Bella's eyes softened, but her tone remained steady. Yes, you were. And that's something you'll have to live with. She left the mansion that night, the weight of the past finally lifting. Outside, the air was crisp, the night sky wide and endless. Michael waited by his car, watching her with quiet pride. How did it go? He asked gently. Bella gave a small, victorious smile. They finally saw me. Not the way they wanted, but the way I am. Her revenge was not in rescuing them, nor in seeking their approval. It was in proving that she had never needed them to begin with. Isabella Carter, the daughter they tried to erase, had written her own story, and it was stronger, brighter, and more powerful than anything they could ever claim.